I'm Francesca Ragno and today I'm your host directly here from the Prague Intercup 2023 because we are exclusively broadcast the live of a very special forum today. Here at the Prague Intercup, organized by the Prague Intercup organizer, we have a special forum with our guest Mr. Peter Upton and Miss Judith Forbis that today will be live here for you, making a forum speaking about the Arabian horse situation nowadays, about history, about tips, about the conformation of the Arabian horses, of course. So please join our live exclusively on Arabian Insider. I'm your host today here for you because you can join us and you can send me questions. So you can follow the live, hear what Miss Judith Forbis and Mr. Peter Upton have to say, and if you have questions, if you have comments, if you want to know something more, just send me a message and I will be your direct connection with them. I will ask the question for you. The forum is about to start. Let's go in.
First question, can we see all the screen on right side or left side? Is it okay for you?
As you can see,
Yes.
Mr. Eric Black is presenting the forum for us and we are about to start.
Next one a little bit. Yes? Technical part is okay. That's most important. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to hand over to my dear colleague, Mr. Scott Benjamin, for the introduction of this wonderful morning here in Prague. Scott.
Good morning, everyone, and I want to thank you for joining us for this very important Breeders' Forum here on a Saturday morning after a late night at the party last night on Friday. So I want to thank, first of all, the Czech Arabian Horse Association for sponsoring this forum and our generous sponsor of this entire event, which is Arabian Farms in Qatar. So thank you, thank you. It's not often that we get together at a horse show and come together as breeders and Arabian horse owners to talk about the things that matter most. We spend a lot of time in the VIP area enjoying our show horses, but we have the esteemed privilege of sitting alongside, and right here in the front of you, two of the legends of our Arabian horse world. It's a privilege to still have these amazing people with us. I could expound on both of them for the 3 hours that we have, but instead I'm going to turn the microphone over to each of them, to Judith Forbis and to Peter Upton, and let them tell you a little bit about their own history, most of which we've probably forgotten because these people have seen and done so very much.
It's on? Can everyone hear me? I'm going to stand up so I can see everyone a little bit. I'm going to reiterate my thanks to Yaroslav and to the staff that put this on, and especially to Tentina, who resurrected all of these tents. I don't know if you all know that they all blew down the other night. So here we are, with good fortune to have them re-erected. I think kind of my life is similar to what many others have had in some respects, but also it's typical of what can be again today and probably still is with many of you. When I began, I was 3 years old and I saw a pony and I fell in love with it. So my life began with a love, and I think without the love of the horse, nothing exists. So from the time I was a child, I didn't have a lot of money at the time. It was during the war, and we used to go out, and my girlfriend and I, and rake leaves and mow lawns to have enough money to buy riding lessons. And eventually I was able to ride a beautiful black horse, and I read Walter Farley's books, and I think important today is to inspire new people, because I'm sure many of you were inspired by something or someone. For me, it was the Black Stallion book. I don't know how many thousands of children have been inspired by that book, and then also by the movie. And I can tell you, I know quite a few people in the Middle East that have become breeders that were also inspired by those. So I think we talk about motivation, but if you're inspired, as John Lyons once told me, he said, if you're inspired, you see yourself at the end. Inspiration will motivate people, but to just motivate without inspiration doesn't really get you anywhere. So I think many of us here have been inspired by something or someone. So when I got older, I wanted to travel, and I had an opportunity to go with the what they called the Point Forward, the Marshall Plan, which was worldwide in reconstructing or helping reconstruct many of the countries that had been either devastated or affected by the Second World War. So I had an opportunity to go to Turkey and ride with the Turkish cavalry. Well, that was one of the benefits. And that was where I found my first Arabian horse. I bought my very first mare from a Turkish cavalryman. And the mare she wasn't sound, but I fell in love with her. She was a beautiful white gray mare. And he said, well, I don't know if she'll ever be sound again. So with a lot of patience and care, we brought her back, and I won the civilian jumping championship of Turkey on this mare. So that was my beginning in Arabian horses. Well, as the Lord would have it, I met my husband in Turkey. And it just so happened he also loved horses. And we used to go out to the racetrack, and I was really shocked because he rode quarter horses as a young boy, as a jockey. And the first horse he ever had was named Silver. And the first pony I ever rode, my little white pony when I was 3 years old, was also named Silver. So I guess it was meant to be. And as life would have it, he had come over to replace the manager, and the manager got well, so we were sent to the back countries of Turkey in a little place called Diyarbakir, which was an old Roman fort. And so to have something to do, we bought some Arabian horses for racing. And so, remember, women were just barely out from behind the veil, and I was a jockey, and Don was a trainer. And we rode in many of the races and learned a lot about Arabian horses, because this was also on the Syrian border amongst the tribes, and the Arabs, the Turks, and the Armenians, and just it was a complete international group, you might say, but certainly no other women. So it was a battle to overcome the prejudice against women at that time. And the women would come out to say, oh, this American woman, she's riding, my goodness. And the place was full of women. And the men would say, you can't go. And they said, oh, yes, we can. So I think I did a little bit for the emancipation of women at that time. Well, as it happened, Carl Rasmussen, I got very interested in the history of the Arabian horse, and I wrote to all of the breeders, Lady Wentworth, she had passed away at the time, I think, and to several of the big breeders in the States, and somehow I'd gotten a hold of one of Rasmussen's books, and he said, go to Egypt. You will find what you're looking for in Egypt. Well, in the meantime, we'd been combing that part of the world and had not really found what we wanted. So when we went to Egypt on our vacation, and we came down that road and saw these beautiful mares on each side. This is it. This is it. So we fell in love with the breeding program there, and we had no intention of buying horses to bring anything home, but then we thought, well, maybe we'll get some young fillies and take them home and just have them for riding, because we really wanted, just when we retire, we want to have a few horses to ride. So we imported these first 3 horses, and at that time we were newly married, and I think this is another thing that's important. We beggared ourselves. When we left the country, we had practically no money left. We bought those 3 horses, and when Dr. Marcelli said, well, we think we can sell them, but we'll have to ask Dr. Afifi. He's the head of the EAO at this time. So we went to him and said, we'd really like to buy these 2 fillies and this colt. And they said, now mind you, this is 1959, and the dollar was worth a lot of money. So he said, well, it's $15,000 for the 3. These were yearlings. So we said, we don't think we can afford that. We went back to the hotel and came back the next day and said, Dr. Phoebe, we really like to have these horses, but we cannot afford that much money. He said, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. You can have them for $10,000 for the 2 fillies, and we will give you Ibn Halim. So, if any of you have seen the book called Ansar Ibn Halima, The Gift, that's why we called it The Gift. Well, one thing morphed into the other. We went home, took these 3 home, and a few people saw them. Doug Marshall flew down. We put a picture of them in one of the magazines, and he wanted to buy them. We said, no, we don't want to sell them. So he went back to Egypt, and things grew. People saw Ibn Halim in the pictures. Oh, we want to bring it to him. And then we took him to a show, and the judges didn't know what to do with him because he was so different. And that's kind of where it all began. Then the marshals brought in their horses, and Rafik and myself, Sakira, and the show string began, and then other people got interested in the Egyptian horses, and we said, well, they're practically gone in America. The old imports are gone. They're all crossed and mixed up with other bloodlines, and we don't have that genetic pool and that type that the Egyptians have maintained for all these years, since literally the time of Abbas Pasha and the royal family. And so we started this pyramid society, not that we felt that these horses were any better than anything else, but that we wanted to preserve that specific genetic pool. So it kind of went on from there, and the Ansar horses became very popular, and then the Renaissance in the Arab world, many of the Arabs came over and they liked this type and bought horses from us, and it became worldwide. I also felt at that time we were losing type when we first started, and decided, well, if I'm going to breed type, put my money where my mouth is and get out and do some judging. And it really broadened my horizon to see all the different bloodlines, because when you're in the show ring, you don't make that kind of differentiation. Either it's a good Arabian horse or it isn't. So as time moved on, our farm became very successful. We worked very, very hard, and today our bloodlines are all over the world. My husband's no longer with me, but I'm still writing books and very interested in where the Arabian horse is going for the future. So that's it in a nutshell.
And this was Miss Judith Forbis explaining a little bit of her story with all of us live on Arabian Insider for the Prague Intercup. Very, very nice to hear. As you can see, we have so many people attending the forum.
Judy failed to mention,
and I want to have all your comments from the live.
Amazing introduction of herself about the fact that she is one of the most prolific authors in the breed as well. In fact, both of these two have written and shared their knowledge about the breed in such a wonderful way, and the access that they've had to the breed in its homeland is really unique. I had a unique conversation with Judy the other day before we turned the microphone over to Peter about the fact that this is, she would have seen Nazir, who we all now know as the leading progenitor on the planet in terms of sire line, and did she think that when she saw that horse all those years ago in the 50s that he would become the most in-demand sire in the world for all bloodlines, not just at the EAO, which had basically been forgotten about. But that's a question we can pose later in the forum. Peter, if you'd like to see if you can top that amazing introduction by Judy Forbis, we'd love to hear about your fascinating history with the Arabian horse. We'll get you on.
Well, that's very, very difficult to follow. But I'll start at the beginning, and you'll hear me often say we. Now, we is that I was one of a twin. He was born 7 minutes before me on the 1st of January, which incidentally is also the birthday for all British thoroughbred racehorses, so I feel very much at home. If he had been born 20 minutes earlier, he would have been a year older than me. Fortunately, he waited long enough to be in the same day. And so we did everything together. And it was 1937. Oh, you can work out the age then. 1937 was the year, 1st of January. But we were the first children born in the year of the coronation of King George VI in England. And so the royal family gave a silver spoon to the firstborn. And they suddenly had to find 2 spoons. And I still got mine, but my late brother lost his. So, horses, where they came in, well, it was wartime from 39, and there was no fuel, or very little fuel, so we went by horse or pony everywhere. Funny enough, at the same age as you first rode a pony, 3 years old, was the first time. I was not saying I rode a pony, but I was sat on a pony. And we were going up the hill of our village and past the vicar's daughter. And she had a white pony called Misty. And it was half Arab, half Welsh. Though later I was to discover that the Welsh side had numerous examples of thoroughbred Arab horses in their pedigree anyway. And in fact, the very first stud book of the Welsh pony, written in an early stud book, was description, just like a small Arab. That was it. so it's in the family. Anyway, yes, so we're heavily involved in ponies and horses. If we wanted to go anywhere, and my mother wanted to go shopping, we went by pony and trap. And much more humane than a car. The only problem, the pony was more used to being driven, the first pony, this same Misty. She wasn't driven very often, and so she didn't always make room for going around a sharp corner. So she'd end up with the wheel against the wall. But nearly everybody else in the village would just come along and see the predicament and pull her out straight again, and on we'd go, because we were quite small then. Anyway, I had... my mother was the youngest of 4 brothers, and they'd all been in the First World War and the Second World War, and one of them lived in India for some time, and as you probably all know, many Arab stallions were sent to India in the early years, even from the 13th century onwards. Marco Polo mentions it. So he became an Arab fanatic. He played polo on Arabs, and so there was a horsey connection on my uncle's side as well. But I first really became interested in Arab horses. So as you can see, I was always interested in horses. Farm horses, little horses, because farm horses were back at work because there were no tractors, because there was no fuel. And therefore, I can't remember the exact year, but when I was still quite young, I met an amazing lady, and she was Lady Anne Lytton, the granddaughter of Wilfrid Scorn and Lady Anne Blunt. She had her own stud, which was called after her grandfather, because, of course, the Crabbit stud went from Lady Wentworth to the stud groom. Strange situation, but there we are. And Lady Anne taught me a great deal about Arab horses, and we lived quite close at that time, and it was regularly visiting her, and she would phone up. She lived alone. She used to phone up and say, "Peter, can you come over?" And she would tell me the stories of going to Sheikh Obeid when she was young with her grandmother, and tell me about the horses, and so on. And then she persuaded me to become a member of the Arab Horse Society. The society started in 1918, and also eventually to become a judge. So I think in all I judged for 56 years. I retired when I was 81, some 5 years ago. I should think to the pleasure of many. And so so that was the start of the Arab horse situation. I was asked very much to help with her horses, In fact, her own stud groom, Lady Anne Lytton's stud groom, had actually been employed as an electrician, but was asked to become a stud groom. Quite a change of job, really. And he wasn't absolutely certain of all horses, and one was a stallion called Silver Flame, who was a big horse. He was nearly 16 hands, and I think the stud groom was a little bit nervous of him. And so Lady Anne, who sadly died at a youngish age, but 2 weeks before she died, she was in hospital, she phoned me up and said, "Peter, I want you to promise me something." And I said, "I'll try." I said, "I can't guarantee it, but I'll try." And she said, "What I want you to do is show Silver Flame to become a champion." Well, that was a very difficult thing to be sure of. And but that very next year, with the show at Ascot in those days, they're French people, I'm sure it was a French judge, I can't remember his name, but he made him champion. So he got his championship. And at about the same time, I was given an Arab mare. She had not had a foal for many, many years, and it was thought that probably she wouldn't have any. But she was, the remarkable thing, she had appalling front legs. But my God, she moved a dream. She was a brilliant mover, this mare. And so really, she was used more as a ridden horse than a breeding. We did try breeding from her once, and she actually killed the foal. So that was, we didn't try again with her. And so it began to grow more and more, and once I was showing, and in fact in the 1970s and 80s, I call those the golden years of the Arab horse, because it was a period when prices were good, there were many, many horses, our national show always held near London so that overseas visitors could come. There would be about 2,000 to 3,000 horses shown over 3 days. It was the biggest, excuse me, the biggest equine event in Europe. It's not so today, but it was then. And for example, yearling filly class, 56 in the class. You had to divide it into 3 sections and so on. Those were the days of the Arab horse, and by then there'd been a large number of other studs develop. So I visited many of the studs and so on, and then when I started judging, it was just nationally. And after judging nationally for some years, by the way, I was doing a job for a while. I was a teacher, and believe it or not. And so when I found, or the headmaster found, that I was wanting to have spare time to go off and judge in Timbuktu or somewhere, and to have a book published or something else, even I began to think, I can't really continue as a teacher. So, and by then I had married Jay, who's sitting back there, and we had young children. And we had also Dartmoor ponies, superb ponies, also with Arab blood in their history, a stallion called Dwarka. And so the interest in the Arab horse continued, and from then on I was busy travelling the country, judging horses, like many of you here, but also painting them and writing books about them. And I've just, in fact, finished my 10th book. Really, I feel that that was probably the last book at my age. But but 2 of the books are on the history of the Arab horse. And of course, the great advantage of the Arab horse, it has a great history. And therefore, you've got a lot more to write about. But I'll end by saying, excuse my voice, I'll end by saying a very short poem, because I think it describes how life is. And it just says this. I need my glasses. And it just says, seeking life. Is life enough, or must I seek for more? Forget regret and learn from past mistakes, and make the most of all that's still before me. However short the future years may seem, as age relentlessly pursues us all, in loving life so much, do not confuse a fear of death with time still left to fit in so much more. Thank you.
Well said, Peter. Thank you so much. So these two distinguished guests have a lot to share with us here this morning. So this is how we're gonna try to work this format. We're gonna turn the microphones over to each of them, first to Judy and then to Peter, and they're gonna share what they'd like to share with us at the Breeders' Forum. And hopefully that will stimulate a lot of questions and interest and a direction from the audience. At that point, Eric and I will both get up, move through the audience, and it's your turn to then ask your questions to try to stimulate some really good conversation here as breeders from all around the world to try to find a good path forward for our breed. So we'll start with Judy. She has a lot to share with us here this morning.
Well, first of all, I would like a show of hands as to how many people have been in this breeding, I hate to call it a business, but in some respects it is. How many have been in the Arabian horse world for, say, 5 years? Can you show hands? 10 years? 20 years? 30? Anybody over 30? Well, so we have a lot to talk about. We've all seen a lot, and hopefully we'll be around to see a lot more. One of the things I think it's important for this forum to have some kind of a goal. If we accomplish one thing, hopefully, as Scott said, maybe we'll accomplish a few more, but if we accomplish one thing that moves us forward, and we intend for this breed to continue to go forward, we'll have accomplished a lot. And if we can do more than one, or come up with some suggestions that will allow us to innovate them and to execute them, because many times we come up with great ideas, there's no leadership, and there's no execution of the ideas. So ideas are great, but unless you can put them into practice, that's one of the goals of this forum, is to find some positive things we can put into practice to move this forward. One of the things I thought would be helpful, and we all know that this breed's kind of on a yo-yo. Some are up, and some are way down. And just to take a look at the horse industry overall, not just the Arabian industry, because we complain about this and we complain about that, but the whole Arabian horse industry. And I asked for some statistics in the States, so bear with me a second. I think it's very interesting. You're familiar with the Tennessee Walker. In 2004, there were 15,500 registered. In 2017, 2,000. So they had an 85% decline in the Tennessee walking horse. In the paint horse, in 2002, there was 60,113 registered. In 2017, 10,000. That's an 83% decline. The Pinto horses, they had 6,000 registered in 2002, 1,500 in 2016, that's a 74% decline. The Arabian horse in the United States, and it pains me to say this, in 2000, there were 9,660. These are registrations per year. In 2022, there were 2,149. That's a 77% decline in the Arabian horse registrations in the United States. The Morgan horse was down 67%, Ponies of the America down 66%, Saddlebred down 59%, Quarter horse down 55%, Saddlebreds down 54%, and the Thoroughbreds were down about 43%. So that's a negative aspect of it. Now we turn around and we look at the Arabian horse in the Middle East. So that was the bottom of the yo-yo, and now we start looking at what's happening in the Arab world. And so I believe, let's see, in the Arab countries, Saudi Arabia is way up. I think they're up to, what, 6,000 or 7,000 registrations. Kuwait's up to around 2,500 or 3,000. One of the things that was very interesting to me, and I didn't mention, we were talking about all the different breeds. The reining horse, are you all familiar with what a reining horse is, what the reining competitions are in the United States? And they're all over the world now, by the way. It's taken hold in Europe and so forth. They started out in 2013 with 73,000 registrations. In 2019, they had 107,000. That's because people wanted to get back and enjoy the horse, being a part of the horse, riding the horse, doing things with the horse, which, of course, they're breeding so many now. Again, what goes up, as we've seen even with the Arabian horses, people get to breeding for the market, and sooner or later, things change. So I think that's kind of fascinating. We have Europe is down, the United States is down, the Middle East is up. So what are some of the things that are positive with this breed that will take it forward? Well, first of all, it's probably the most wonderful horse on the planet. It's been around for thousands of years in its purebred form, as we know it from the rock art in the temples of Egypt and from many of the great classic artists. So, as a utility, it can do anything, much more so than many of the other breeds, which are singular in their purpose. And we have the opportunity for, again, this breed to do many things rather than just to be breeding for the show. I think it's very important, and I spoke to many of my friends who have been in the business over 20 years, and the one thing everyone said was, we want to get back to enjoying the horse, to be with the horse, to be a part of the horse, and do activities again with the horse, rather than just breeding for the market and breeding for a show horse. So there's many, many opportunities for the lower-ended, the middle-of-the-road horses that are not the superstars that everybody wants to go out and buy and show. So this is the core center of our breed that we need to, I think, go back to. You know, when I always felt that a family that plays together stays together, and returning to the roots is very important. We had some wonderful things and could be recreated again. We had Arabian horse fairs in America where there were all kinds of activities, educational, a little bit of a horse show, presentations of horses, just fun. We had the Egyptian event. I'm sure some of you have been there as judges, or we started out with a wonderful motivation, education, presentations, talking about breeding. There were only 2 classes of a horse show. When it morphed into a horse show, more and more wanted to have more horse show, more horse show, more horse show, and it got so expensive, couldn't continue. But the concept was wonderful, which could also be done again. We had the Black Stallion Literacy Program. I was very much a part of that. I'm sure many of you have read The Black Stallion or seen the film, were inspired by it. They started a program called the Black Stallion Literacy Program, and they would have educational books and programs, and they would go into the schools, 1st grade and 4th grade. It was tremendously successful. I took it on in our town for 2 or 3 years. And of course, it takes money, and you have to go out and get support and so forth. But it was very, very progressive, not only in Arkansas, but throughout the United States. Well, unfortunately, as they wanted to expand, the Farley family that was inherited after Walter passed away got greedy, it went away. But it was very positive for young people. These are things that can be recreated. I think the Nobel Festival, it was in Amsterdam or in the Netherlands, was very positive. People could bring their horses, just have fun. We have an Arabian Horse Museum in the United States, which is very interesting to visit at the Kentucky Horse Park. And of course, you've got WAHO, their conferences every 3 years. So I think education is important. We have to find greater ways to educate and inspire new people, and we can do that. Health and research is important. There's a great deal being done right now on the genome by Dr. Ansek in Colorado State, things that will help us as far as breeders. The Arabian horse is a lifestyle. It's a wonderful thing as far as inspiring some other people to be a part of the lifestyle. Commitment, I think we have to be committed. Not many people are born to be breeders. Some just enjoy being around the horse. But if you're going to be a breeder, you have to commit to the long term. And I think most of us, many of us here have certainly done that. And anybody who wants to be involved can be involved in some way. Another thing is the appreciation of art. You know, we talk about this breed as being living art, the opportunities to study great artists who have portrayed the Arabian horse and have given many of us inspiration as to the type and the quality and the beauty of the past so that we can carry it forward in the future. The Renaissance in the Arab world has been amazing, as we all know. The horse shows need to be more enjoyable, more educational. I think a lot of people find it a tad boring. Many of us are so used to them, we look for certain things, but new people, and that's another story. It's another part of this, so we won't go into that yet. So those are basically, I think, appreciation and inspiration and the various activities that we can develop in the future. So that's kind of where I wanted to start, where we know that there's an up and that there's a down, and somewhere we need to get back into the middle. And what is it that's going to bring us back into center again?
Thank you, Judy. Peter, if you would like to share with our group.
I'm a bit lame, so I hope it's a better mic. But I'll try and stand up. Right. Now, I want to stress the purity and power of the Arab horse, and I've called my short speech the Arabian, an equine work of art. Now, the Arabian from the earliest times was recognized as the only true or thoroughbred. Thorough means pure bred horse. And for this was valued above all other horses. Bit closer, sorry, right. Over the centuries, the Arab horse has proved invaluable as the great improver, and its blood is to be found in virtually all light horse and native pony breeds of the world. I wrote one book called Out of the Desert, which examines the Arab's influence on all our British breeds, even, believe it or not, the Shetland pony. I don't know whether he knelt down or what, but anyway. Abroad, the Arab can be found in the history of the Shagir, the Lipizzana, the Morgans, Akeltekes, Tricanas, and even Percherons. So, Percheron farm horses. I think it was Napoleon who lent 4 Arab stallions to the breeding of Percherons. In fact, early writers such as Judith described the Arab as the sacred breed. In Britain, and I'm taking Britain a bit because that's what I am. In Britain, probably the first named Arabs to arrive in England were owned by a man called Sir Bevis of Hampton during the reign of King Edgar. We're going back to 944, so quite early on. There were two of them, a mare called Truncifice from Damascus, and the stallion called Arundel from Armany. The name Arundel derives from Irondel, the swallow, for he was as swift as a swallow. He won many races. In 1190, King Richard Coeur de Lion went on the Third Crusade, and in the interim, which was a description of it, it is recorded that the infidels, not being weighed down with heavy armour like our knights, were always able to outstrip them in pace, and so were a consistent trouble, and one may liken their horses to the swallows for swiftness. Anyway, Saladin, presented King Richard with some Arab horses, and so impressed by them, Richard purchased 2 more in Cyprus. Of these Arab horses, he states, who in this world has their peer? In other words, they're the most important. A letter written by Castiglione in 1533 to the Duke of Mantua mentions supplying Arab horses to England. He, as ambassador to King Henry VIII, not that he could ride them, he was too fat, but still, mentions proposing 2 gifts, a painting by Raphael and some brood mares of pure Oriental blood. And in the 16th century, a Welshman called Tudor Aled wrote in his book Abbot of Conway a description of a stallion with a stag's sidelong glance and a dished face. It must be the first time the word dished appeared. And with a dished face, a nostril wide, eyes keen and lively, dancing in his head, 2 slim restless ears, his coat like new silk. He is surely describing an Arab horse. It was Napoleon who describes the Arab horse as such. Gentlemen, you can with Arab blood get immediate improvements in all breeds. The Arab is 1,000 times better than the English thoroughbred. He was French after all, he was going to say that. For improving every race. For in him we return to the unmixed purity and power of the original breed. And of course, being in those days the only pure breed, the only thoroughbred, because thoroughbred racehorse is not thoroughbred. It has got unknown history in its pedigree. So it was potential. Being the only pure breed, it was potential and stronger, and therefore it was, hence it being called the improver or the great improver. So long before Arabs appeared for any reason, and I actually have pinned up there, you see one strong column, this one, that is all the Arab horses that appear in the history of the British racehorse thoroughbred in volumes 1 and 2. Everybody knows there are 3 Arabs. The Bali Turk, the Bali Arabian, the Godolphin Arabian. But there were over 100 more Arab horses used from 1614 to 1815 in the production of the thoroughbred horse. It was the great improver. So we, in a way, have a certain problem lying here. But before I mention that, I should say that the use of Arabs for breeding only changed for breeding better horses or purer horses, didn't really appear as a regular thing in England until the 19th century. And everybody knows that 2 of the biggest people in that were Wilfrid Scorn Blunt and Lady Anne Blunt, who brought in 58 horses from the desert and from Ali Pasha Sharif. There were 1 or 2 other breeders before, one actually called Roger Upton, but not related at all, I'm sad to say. why did I say about pedigrees and herein lies a problem? Because in the Arabian breed, there are certain bloodlines that were accepted by Wahoo, for example, but which include horses with an unknown history. And for purists, this may be a big problem. But worse still, some bloodlines even include horses that are recorded in stud books that are not Arabs. So, you know, we have to be careful in deciding what is a purebred Arab. Of course, there are also unknowns who may or may not be impure. The tribal sheikhs out in the desert clearly made a difference between stallions who were known to be purebred or other stallions, known as Kadishes, whose pedigrees were uncertain. So what did they do? Well, in the desert, the Bedouin would sew up their mare's vaginas to stop her being covered by any old stallion, only the stallion of their choice. Any attempt to lie about the covering would bring dishonour to the whole tribe. And all matings in the desert were two witnesses from another tribe, probably even another tribe that they were in war with, would be asked to come there to witness that they were being covered by the right stallion. So there's no doubt about it, the Bedouins' concerns regarding purity was also influenced by their belief in telegony. Now, telegony you may or may not know about. If you don't know about it, there's questions later and you can ask. But this applied not only to the horses, it applied to the people. And I was once out in the Sahara with falcons, flying with some Saudi princes, and at a bird called the Habara we were flying. And we were down at dinner one day, and the dinner had a dinner table, and we were sitting cross-legged around the table, and Prince Saud was sitting there, and down here was his brother Badr, who followed the tradition of being a good Arab and being a poet. And suddenly, we'd been eating for a little time, and an old man in a rather dirty dish dasher and a kaffir on his head, only very small, came walking towards us, and immediately the two princes stood up, and so the rest of us stood up. And why did we stand up? I asked the prince later, because we moved aside to let the old man sit down and join us. And it was, he said, he is the direct descendant of one of the oldest of the leading tribes in the whole of the desert, and therefore he is more important than we are. They're older than the Sauds. And so he said, therefore we address their position. So they take purity of blood in people equally interesting. So that is why one can, to a certain extent, assume, I think quite fairly, that up until the First World War, that virtually every Arab in the desert was pretty pure, well-bred. After that, it changed things. 2 wars changed things a lot. So another problem, I think, for the breed is a closed stud book. Now that might hurt a few people, but it is a big problem, because a closed stud book means an inevitability of inbreeding, which is another subject for discussion. Added to this problem is what I call genetic erosion and the loss of foundation lines. And I'll take, for example, Crabbit. The Blunts imported 38 mares, of which only 22 bred on, and of these only some 6 appear in a Crabbit horse today. And in the stallions, there were 22 imported, about 12 had children, and today only 8 of them exist as a line in pedigree today. So that's what I mean by genetic erosion, is an inevitability of lines dying out. Now, one of the safeguards of that is, of course, state studs, but that's what I'll mention later. Now, Judy was talking about this drop in numbers. Well, you may well be interested in this from Britain. I'm not aware of the world situation as regards the future of the Arab horse today, but in Britain, our Arab Horse Society, founded in 1918, records such details. In 1987, when I was first president of the AHS, our membership was over 4,000 people. 25,000 Arab horses alive in the country, and we registered 1,800 foals a year. By 2022, last year, the last year we got the records, our membership has dropped to about 559 from 4,000, and our foal registrations, even worse, of purebred Arabs, the numbers have plummeted from 1,800 to 270, just 270. So you can see, as Judy was pointing out, this is a problem that has become quite important today. Sadly, all too often, particularly since I call it the invention of DNA, some experts criticize the purity or the correct ancestry of certain horses. And I must say, I would personally far rather accept the words of those who knew the said horses than present-day people who are making new decisions about them regarding DNA. But my last plea here is for the continuation of state studs. For they are the only studs that can ensure continuity. I mean, most of the rest of us, we bred them for 40 years or whatever, or you've been so concentrating on your horses as mum that the children think that they never want to see a horse again. And so it's one generation. And so this is the really important thing about state studs, and yet state studs are under pressure in many countries and have been lost in many countries. So, as I say, few private studs are maintained for more than one or perhaps two generations. And breeding, as we all know, is a long-term business. Now, I thought it would be quite nice to recall the words of one or two Bedouins. I spent quite a lot in my youth time living or staying with Bedouins, whether it was only for a day or I think the longest was a week. And I used to try and see the old men and ask them certain questions because they would have been old enough. Bedouin, the old men, because they don't do any work, the women do all the work. The old Bedouins live to great ages. And one thing I thought it was worth mentioning was this. It's about meeting with the Rawala tribe, a very big tribe. It's got something like 185,000 tents. It's a big, and you could say by population at least double or treble that because of the people in each tent. Anyway, so many years ago, in fact it was the 25th of August 1992, I had a majlis. A majlis is a meeting of the old people of the tribe with His Highness Sheikh Anwar ibn Shalan of the Rawala. And it will be, I think, of some interest to people who've read Raswan's books and so on. I had stayed with the tribe some 15 years before, out at El Arish, where Jordan sticks out towards Iraq, where with my son I met with Sheikh Faisal, the younger brother of Sheikh Anwar. But on this occasion, with his majlis, my purpose was to seek answers to many questions I wanted to clarify regarding Karl Raswan. Sheikh Anwar was the eldest son of Sheikh Fawaz, son of Nawaf, son of Nuri, all of whom Raswan met. Indeed, some of the elders of the tribe may well have remembered Raswan. In Black Tents of Arabia, there is a title of one chapter called Aniga the Falcon. Raswan makes it clear that Aniga was a male falcon, but Arabs fly females. They're bigger and stronger and more aggressive. Reminds me of other animals. Sorry. He then goes on to describe a flight at a heron a harem, not eatable, and therefore were very unlikely to be flown. So I had my doubts about some of the things he wrote. I looked at his books and took out all statements of facts, like the years with the Rawala, becoming a sheikh and fighting with them. And the following are the answers that Sheikh Anwar, who had confirmed the answers with the old men of the tribe. I shall read his parts and so on. I, Anwar, Sheikh al-Rawala, would not have agreed to give you an audience, being an Englishman, except for the wish of Siti Alia, Princess Alia. For her only have I agreed to this meeting. Somewhat taken aback, I answered, but you must dislike the New World more, and we do have a common love of the Arab horse. I have asked for this meeting with you and the old men of the tribe to inquire about Kal Raswan. When did you first visit the Rawala? Question. Sheikh. He visited us in 1909, 1910, and he took 22 mares and 1 stallion. These horses were taken by men of the tribe to the ship, and their destination was America. Well, we've not heard of them. Question. Did he visit you again? Yes, he visited us in 1919, 1920. He returned and presented Emir Nuri with a Ford car. Nuri, my great-grandfather, rejected the present and insisted on paying for it, and he gave Raswan 5,000 gold. Question. So he came on other occasions? Sheikh. Raswan made an agreement with the Americans to make a film about the Rawala. So Amir Nuri made a big effort to collect camels, horses, sheep and men to show the world the strength of the tribe. Nuri insisted that all the tribe should appear, otherwise they would be punished. 20,000 horsemen gathered for the film. No film was made, but photographs were taken. Question. Did Raswan buy other horses? On every trip, he took horses away with him, but except for the first lot, the Rawala do not know their destination. And then in the 1930s, he went there with Zaitarsky, and we know about those horses anyway. Question. Did Raswan become a friend of Sheikh Fawaz? Sheikh. Raswan did have a good relationship with Sheikh Fawaz, however he was nothing more than a merchant who came and went. Raswan was not made an emir of the tribe. Why should he have been? He took advantage of the kindness of the Rawala and made much money from our horses. Question. Tell me about Sheikh Fawaz. Fawaz was a great leader and warrior, the greatest emir from Sotam to the present day. He became leader after Nuri, but while Nuri was still alive, a sign of his strength, Fawaz had 27 servants and was a powerful man. Question. Was Raswan given a sword made from a meteorite? The Sheikh. Nuri may well have been given a sword to Raswan. It is our tradition to give gifts. The blade was not from a meteorite, but metal hit by lightning during a thunderstorm. Question. What about the markab, the howdah on the camel? The markab is still with the Rawala ever since it was taken in war. 40 brothers were killed to save the markab. It's a big frame that goes on top of a camel with the most beautiful girl member of the tribe in it. Question, and nearly there. Has the Shalan always been leaders of the Rawala? The Shalan and the Rawala have been one for 504 years. Did Abbas Pasha I send slaves, Merjan, to buy horses? Sheikh, the Merjan are still with us. Abbas Pasha I sent his son to stay with the Rawala, and he died in the Jolan Heights and was buried there. Question, how numerous is the Rawala? In 1938, a census was taken of the Rawala by the Sheikh. There were 86,000 tents. An average of 5 people a tent makes a big number of people. Question, was there a war, as Raswan states, between the Siba and the Rawala? Siba is another of the Anazar tribes. Sheikh, there was no war between the Siba and Rawala, and it is not true that Raswan acted as a peacemaker between Fawaz and Mijan al-Mehed. In fact, Fawaz's aunt was married to Mijan, and his daughter, Fawaza, was married to Mijan's son. The last page. from where came the Ruala on their name? And he says about that, but I won't go on. So, this is a nice one. Question, did other Europeans visit you? This is to the Ruala. Sheikh, one visitor was Burt Lancaster. That was a slip. It was William Lancaster. Not Burt Lancaster, the actor, who lived with us for 6 years and then wrote unpleasant things about the tribe. So, question, where did the strains of Arab horses originate? Sheikh, Rodan was a son of Shalam. Jedran was of the Ruala, from Freya, the mare Freya. And he says then, I will present you with a complete history of the Shalam. You are welcome to come again, but only because you are a friend of Siti Alia. I answered, Princess Alia is a great ambassador for the horse of Arabia and is known throughout the world. The Sheikh says, Princess Alia is a great ambassador for all things Arabic throughout the world. Salam alaikum. So, I spent a lot of my youth going to tribes and meeting some of the old people of the tribe because I felt it was the last opportunity to find out about those tribes. And I won't bother you with any more, but this, for example, here somewhere, is about, I think that's it, yeah. There is the family tree he gave me, all very complicated. And this is, and for each of the tribes who were selling horses abroad, I did the horses. Those are, as far as I'm aware, virtually every horse that I can find that was bought from the Ruala tribe by people from 1836 right through until the 1947. And so you could see it was an enormous number of horses, including many that were famous at Babolna in Egypt and Italy even, and the UK and America. So, and I did as much as I could to let each tribe have a copy of the horses that their tribe had sold in the previous years, and an Arabic translation of it, because I thought it was nice for the tribes to know the answers as well. So there we are, that's the end of what I wanted to say, but it is really to do with how important the Arab was, because it was the first and only pure-bred animal. And secondly, that was its strength, but it was also its strength because it was a family horse. It was a horse for everything. And I'm always a bit afraid that we may move towards a stage where we have what I would call Arabic equine athleticus, and Arab equine beautiful. So, you know, we don't want it to drift apart into different Arabs. Arabs should be Arabs. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Peter said an incredible amount of things with so much wisdom, but there's a link from the past that these two share that is the gift to us in the present. You know, for Peter to put up that list of all those horses that came from the Ruala tribe, those are the same horses now in the pedigrees of all the horses that all of us enjoy in every part of the world. Peter also talked about, you know, here we are in the 21st century in Prague, a city with its own history and its own amazing contribution to the culture of modern civilization. But he talks about horses coming into Europe in the 10th century. This is an incredible link to the past. These are the issues that we talk about today as breeders are issues that have been part of the conversation now for centuries. And so Judy now would like to talk about some of the solutions going forward, and then we're going to open it up to all of you, because there's several things that Peter talked about, the family horse and the fact that these two started riding horses before they became the famous icons that they are now. And we'll stimulate some conversation and just see if we can find some really important solutions to help the breed going forward. Judy.
So I'd like to share a few ideas about solutions, and then maybe we take a little break and everybody put their thinking caps on and ask some questions and see what positive suggestions we can come up with that can be executed. Talking is not going to get us anywhere if we can come up with something that can be done, and that was one of the reasons I really wanted Scott to be involved in this, because he's been doing something that I think is something that can be shared and can go across borders and continents. So I just wrote a few things down, and I'm not involved in the day-to-day activities in the horse world like many of you are, going to horse shows and so forth. I've been kind of out of it since about 2006, other than writing books. And I'm occasionally go to horse shows, and I see and I hear. So these are a few of the things I think that are important for us to just give some thought to real quickly in the form of solutions to where we're going. Number one is to change our thinking. A lot of people are moaning and groaning, oh, the breed is down, and yada, yada, what are we going to do? We have to change our thinking and think out of the box. Secondly, breeders need to take greater control of the breed. We literally, and I don't mean this to be in a negative stance, but it is true in many respects, breeders have turned the breed over to the trainers. We need to take more control. We need to do more things that are breeder-oriented and make more decisions on our own than just let the trainers be in charge. And I've seen this in the United States for quite some number of years, and I think we see it elsewhere too. I think we have to be kinder to each other. I've seen breeding programs really hurt by stupidity, by incorrect information, by people trying to destroy somebody else's market, and I've been involved in it, in hearing it. So I think we have to be a little bit kinder to each other as breeders and learn to appreciate what everybody else is doing. And that was one of the reasons I learned to be a judge, because I wanted to see what everyone else was doing and going to other breeding farms. It didn't matter to me whether they were Egyptian or Cravat or Spanish Cross or whatever. A good horse is a good Arabian horse. So I think there's an old saying, you can pay back a debt of gold, but you can never pay back a debt of kindness. I think we need to keep that uppermost in our minds in relationships to other breeders. Patience. Many people don't have the patience to stay with it. I think there's too much of an instant gratification these days. Young people want it now. People want to buy it now. If you're going to be a breeder, as we who have been in it for many years know, it requires a tremendous amount of patience. So never give up, because it's not for the faint of heart. Again, a closed mouth gathers no foot. Don't spread rumors and try to damage other breeders' program just because of something you don't like, you've heard, or a rumor. So I think that's really important. Again, it's be kinder. And again, there's a friend of mine who was in the business many years ago. He gave me a little sign and it said, "A closed mouth gathers no foot." And I try to remember it. Not always, don't always remember it, but I try. The other thing, the opportunities now for sharing. I mean, the expenses, and we all know the expenses are growing. Everything is growing more and more expensive. It's more difficult to do this or to do that. There are opportunities to share. I mean, in the old, early days, in the golden years, I guess you could say, we had syndicates, not always on a positive way. There were more investment syndicates. But there's no reason why people can't cooperate together, do some syndications. Maybe if you want to have a great thoroughbred or a great Arabian show horse or someone, get together, pool it together, and enjoy it. You don't have to be an individual to do everything. Probably the most important thing is to develop educational courses and seminars for newcomers and to inspire them. So you really have to know the breed before you try to breed it. And many people don't. They fall in love. Oh, look, that's a beautiful horse. I want to own it. Oh, I got to buy it. Don't have any clue as to the history and the romance and the excitement behind this Arabian horse is unique. It's one of the great selling So I think that's something we have to really continue to work on. I think we have to support the Arabian horse artists. They're a very valuable part of our breed. I know I learned a lot when I first began by studying the classic artists and the representations that they had of Arabian horses, Diderot, Jericho, Gros, many of the early 19th and 18th century painters. One of the things that we're having a problem with, as I see it, and probably many of you see it, is the education and drawing young people in. The breed's only going to go forward with those young people that we bring in and inspire to become horsemen, breeders, trainers, whatever. We need to develop some educational activities, maybe some scholarships, and I don't mean that they have to go to college. Maybe that some scholarships could be awarded to young people that want to travel and see the breeding farms, learn more about the horse, become inspired from just the attention and activity and seeing what other people are doing. I think that's one thing that's very, very important and certainly can be done by different groups of breeders who might get together and say, we're going to sponsor this young person to go maybe to the Middle East or to Europe or to this breeding farm or to a university to see the art or whatever. We have to learn to understand and appreciate the differences the similarities in type or the lack of in other breeders' programs. Not that they're wrong or not that we're right, as long as it's a beautiful and wonderful Arabian horse. And we don't change the breed into looking like a quarter horse or a thoroughbred or a standardbred or something that it never was intended to be. I think we have to encourage activities that the Arabian horse was known for in the past and still is. Okay, the halter class is probably the largest class at most of the shows, but any amateur can learn to do it and to stand up a horse. So you don't always have to use a trainer. I mean, truly, the trainers, it's their profession. But I have to tell you, my husband showed two horses to U.S. national top 10 when the classes were anywhere from 50 to 80. And he had no experience other than being a good athlete, watching other people, and working at home with our horses. So it can be done, but you have to pay your dues. And you can't walk in the ring and expect the judges are going to just out of the blue pick something that maybe is equal to somebody else, but they know the trainer. And I'm sorry to say, but it happens. If you walk into a room and a cocktail party, what do you usually do? You go over to somebody you know. So you do have to pay your dues, whether it's dogs, cats, horses. Been there, done that. We have to find a use for the middle market, lower quality horses, because no matter how great a breeder you are, you're going to have a few that are the superstars and the rest are in the middle. Some of those middle horses are going to be your great broodmares, but you never know until you breed it. So also we have to find a middle market, and again, I think this comes back to the family horse and getting people enthused. Maybe you don't start at the top with a super horse. You start out with something that's well bred, that's a good horse, that's sound, you can ride, you can do something with. So I think the use of the lower quality or middle quality stallions and mares and geldings, we have to find opportunities for. So those are basically, I think, the marketing development is something that we have to work on. And again, we have nothing that is worldwide that's inspirational as a great film. Are any of you familiar with the Yellowstone TV series on television now? It's basically quarter horse, reining, and so forth. That has sparked such tremendous interest in reining horses and quarter horses. And the man who developed Yellowstone gave $1 million to the reining group, and that money has gone into purses, and great activity now between horses and their owners. Of course, the trainers have gotten in it, and the big money's getting in it, so it eventually will end up in the same situation that the Arabians did. What goes way up is eventually going to have to find a middle. But it was inspirational, just like the Black Stallion films were inspirational. We have nothing at this point in time that is international that will inspire and make someone, oh my goodness, I'd really like to have one of those horses. Hopefully that can be on the horizon, but again, as you know, it takes money and it takes a really a good writer and a great producer. So those are primarily the things I think we have to focus more on, the enjoyment of the horse and getting people involved for what the Arabian really is. Not to say we should give up horse shows, but that's kind of the carrot on the stick. We have to get back to the reality of the joy of owning and being a part of the Arabian horse community. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Judy. It's a wise thing with which to conclude. And we're all here at a horse show, ironically. We're all here at an A show in Prague. But chances are none of us started in this business at a horse show. We started with a horse that we loved, much like Judy and Peter did, riding horses at a very young age. Riding horses, I think that's really important to remember. We're here at a breeding show with a few riding classes, but quite honestly, we probably need to flip that narrative on its head and have a lot more riding classes with some beautiful breeding classes and get more people involved. But that'll be part of our conversation, which we'll have next. We're going to take a short break so you guys can have a chance to get up, grab something to drink, use the toilet. We'll meet back here in 5 minutes time, which really means 10 minutes, but 5 minutes time, we'll be right back here to engage these two amazing people. I want to thank you for sitting with us thus far, and we'll be right back with the question and answer portion of the forum.
And I really think you all want to hear what Scott has done. It's a very positive activity in Australia that any country and any group of breeders can follow. So we do have one thing that we know is positive, and that is working, and I think you'll find it all very interesting.
So, as Scott said, we're going to take 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes break. Of course, for everyone, just enjoy it a bit. You can think about all what has been said, and if you have questions, just send a message to me, comment here. We are going to be back in 10 minutes with the live, so connect again.